From our perspective, right now may seem like the most innovative time in history, with new technologies allowing us to build upon what we know and make some really cool shit. But people have been making tools and inventions for a long time, and there's even some inventions that we lost track of and can't even make anymore. Hey Most Amazing fam, my name is Abby, and today I'll be telling you about the top 10 mysterious inventions that disappeared in history. So right before we get into it, I gotta raise awareness that on our Facebook page we are posting some exclusive content, so make sure you check that out if that piques your interest. But okay, let's start talking about these mysterious inventions. Starting off at number 10, we have flexible glass. Imagine you are walking through your house sipping water from a glass and you stub your toe, and so you drop your glass of water and watch it in slow motion as it begins to fall to the ground, and you wince because you're bracing for it to shatter, but it doesn't, and instead you hear a thud and you feel just a splash of water on your feet. So you look down and the glass isn't shattered, it's just dented. Imagine. Now that's something that could have been if Roman Emperor Tiberius Caesar hadn't beheaded the man who invented flexible glass. So this happened in the beginning of the 1st century between 14 and 37 Common Era, and the story goes that this guy who had been exiled was asking for a pardon from Caesar, just being like, come on dude, you know, let me back in, and then he was like, oops, and dropped this glass drinking bowl. So it fell and it showed some signs of wear and tear, but then he fixed it right in front of the emperor as if it had never fallen in the first place. So Caesar kinda shook, was just like, does anyone else know these tricks? And the guy was like, no. So Emperor Caesar axed him, and supposedly he thought this kind of material could drive down the price of gold and silver, so he thought he was protecting his assets. But anyways, now that leads to me now being more aware of what I'm doing, because if I'm clumsy, we don't have flexible glass, we just have regular. But let's go on to number 9, an ultra carburetor. So imagine, again, you are in your car going for a drive. Let's say it's a road trip with your buddies, and Dave is snoring in the back and Janet is giving you directions from the co-pilot seat, and she tells you, hey, there's a gas station at the next exit, you're gonna want to stop, you're probably running low on fuel. But then you look at, you know, your display and it says, no, you're about 3/4 in the tank, and so you're like, no, we're good, let's cruise on through. She gives you a look. But how is this? How are you so fuel efficient? What is the fuel efficiency? Well, time and time again, there have been rumors that someone has invented a carburetor that has insane fuel efficiency. There was Tom Ogle, Mike Shetley, and Charles N. Pogue, just to name 3 names that allegedly created a carburetor that got at least 100 miles per gallon. But then where did these inventions disappear to? Well, conspiracy theorists think the ideas were shut down by Big Oil, and the inventor's notes were either destroyed or Big Oil hired someone to just get rid of the people. Now, there's not a lot of proof behind this one, but that being said, when Volkswagen came out with a very fuel efficient car called the XL1, it wasn't offered in the United States. People think that maybe it was banned because it would increase demand of more fuel efficient cars and Big Oil would lose out on money, but that car isn't even made anymore, so who knows? Right now more people are going towards electric cars, so with all that being said, I just say we bring back horses, keep it chill. That's the real horsepower, you know? Right? But let's go on to number 8. Petrification techniques. Now, mummification and preserving bodies isn't only for the Egyptians. Girolamo Segato from the late 18th to early 19th century was known for his uncanny talents and techniques of turning flesh into stone. And yes, it's not quite actually stone, it was just something the people said, but it was petrification. And to this day, the same level of petrification has not been attained by anyone else. Part of the reason why this is because he kept his secrets close to his heart and then passed away before he could pass on his techniques. He passed away at about the age of 44, so didn't really get to really pass on what he learned. Then, when the head of a 25-year-old woman he petrified was studied, they assumed part of his technique had to be done before rigor mortis set in, which is the stiffness of the joints that happens a few hours after a person dies, so he would have had to done this pretty quick. All that being said, if you want to be mummified, I'm sorry to say you'll have to go kind of old school. Just gonna wrap yourself like a mummy. I think that's how they do it, I'm not sure. On to number 7, Roman concrete. And yeah, this one gets me fired up, and you may be like, why Abby, why are you so fired up about concrete? But I need to tell you, I feel like we think we're the pinnacle of humanity right now, and we can't even figure out how Romans made their concrete better than us. Like, our concrete erodes over decades. Roman concrete, it's been hit by waves for over 2,000 years. That's just like you versus the man you tell your guy not to worry about. I don't know, it's that meme, that vibe, same thing. Now, the only thing scientists have found out supposedly about Roman concrete is that they used volcanic ash because its chemical reaction with seawater only makes it stronger instead of eroding it like our concrete today. They look to nature to get their recipe with volcanic ash, and now their buildings last for such a long time. But we don't have that recipe, so we have weak concrete. It's been lost. Mysteriously. But let's go on to number 6, another thing lost from a similar time, Greek fire. And so we're hopping from Romans to the Greeks with Greek fire, aka liquid fire. So back then it was a fun war weapon that had unique properties that made it popular in naval battles. It could continue burning while floating on water. So let's say you hop from a burning ship hoping to get away from fire because yeah, water and fire don't mix. But then there's a patch of fire in the water. Yeah, that's the power that this lost invention of fire had. Now the process of how to make it was heavily guarded state secret by the Greeks because of how effective it was, so now that is another recipe that's gone. Now some people think that quicklime was an active ingredient or crude petroleum or saltpeter, but we don't really know, which is just kind of wild. Like, it was just burning on the water. Ooh. But let's go on to number 5, super compression. Not even talking about HD movies, a movie is usually between 1 or 2 gigabytes. That's how much storage they take up, and compressing them down to even a quarter of the size without losing quality is hard today. But back in 1995, so like way back, well at least for me, Jan Sloot said he could store a complete movie in 8 kilobytes of data. That's kilobytes, not megabytes. There are 1,000 kilobytes in 1 megabyte and 1,000 megabytes in 1 gigabyte, just so you know, little context. Now, days before Sloot was going to officially sign the contract and sell the invention, he passed away from a heart attack. All of the information on this possible storage, like way to store data, was lost forever. Now just imagine the possibilities that could have been had if we optimized our storage instead of now as we just continuously grow our storage space. One of my first iPods I think had 2 to 4 gigabytes of storage, and now that's just unheard of today. Like, that's a movie in itself. But let's go to number 4, Damascus steel. Now, Damascus steel is noticeable from its really cool patterns. It's kind of reminiscent of flowing water, with the shapes flowing into one another. And it was also known to be tough, good at being sharpened to a resilient edge, and resistant to shattering, really common in swords and stuff like that. Sure, it can be beaten by quite a few different metals we have today, but it was really cool and something we lost nonetheless. Now, our loss of Damascus steel goes hand in hand with our loss of a known method of producing woods. And woods is a type of metal, but we don't have the means either in raw materials or production techniques to really make some more of it, and what's is what was used to make Damascus steel, so we're just missing a pretty important part of trying to replicate that today. Another thing that we may be able to replicate today but is still really cool from its time is our number 3, the ANTIKYTHERA mechanism. Now the ANTIKYTHERA mechanism is a device people are calling the first computer, and it's from 2,000 years ago. Obviously it's an analog computer, but it's seen as years ahead of its time. Ancient Greeks used it to chart the movements of planets in our solar system, to predict lunar and solar eclipses, and even count down the time until the next Olympic Games. Now, what makes this obviously a mystery is how nothing like this, at this level of technology, was seen for at least another 1,000 years. And plus, it was lost in history until 1900, when divers began to recover pieces of this mechanism from the ANTIKYTHERA wreck. And it still wasn't until 2006 that the device caught broader attention. So before any of us get hoity-toity about our tech, now let's see you track the planets using a homemade analog computer. I know I can't. They even saw things differently. It's just wild. But let's go to number 2, another thing from back then, universal antidote. So back in the day, you can imagine that kings and emperors were more than a little careful of being usurped or killed for people to get their power. That's probably one of the reasons that King Mithridates VI developed a universal antidote. And like, whoa, a universal antidote to all poisons? Maybe. The substance is said to have been developed by the king and perfected by Emperor Nero's physician. Its ingredients, according to ancient historians, were opium, chopped vipers, and a combination of small doses of poisons and their antidotes. Now today, we don't have a universal antidote except in our dreams and possibly Dungeons and Dragons, but what they were trying to do, super cool. Now, our big number one, wireless power. Now, when I say wireless power, I mean Nikola Tesla was outlining a system of broadcasting wireless energy for many purposes. Instead of using wires, he thought the earth could be used to convey the energy from the transmitter to the receiver. Now, I'm no physicist or scientist, so instead of going into the details of how, let me give some examples of practical applications Nikola Tesla was thinking of. With the powers of the world wireless system, he said people could communicate at any distance, transmit power without wires, and locate objects in the oceans and seas. He said it himself, "It will soon be possible, for instance, for a businessman in New York to dictate instructions and have them appear instantly in type in London or elsewhere. He will be able to call up from his desk and talk with any telephone subscriber in the world. It will only be necessary to carry an inexpensive instrument not bigger than a watch, which will enable its bearer to hear anywhere on sea or land for a distance of thousands of miles. One may listen or transmit speech or song to the uttermost parts of the world." So, right now, we have wireless transmission like that with a smartwatch, but imagine if you never had to charge it. That's what I'm saying. Because like an Apple Watch can do most of what that says, but or any other smartwatch. No specific branding. That's all I have for you today. Let me know what you think down below, and while you're down there, give us a like and subscribe and ring that bell for notifications. And remember to check us out on Facebook for exclusive content, and look at our new channel, Top 10 Central, for some other cool stuff that's coming out. Now, I've been Abby, and until next time, be inventive. Ooh. Dance break, dance break, dance break. Yes, cool. Swords and stuff like that. Let's see you track down the planets using a not track down, just grab them. And that's probably one of the reasons that King Mithridates the Sixth, I'm gonna go back. Mithridates? As if he even knows how to pronounce his own name, please. Potions and their antidote. Potions. Now, I'm no physicist or scientist, so instead of going into the